The Beginner's Guide to Friendship Bracelets is a collection of photo tutorials for beginners that will take you all the way from the basics to the more advanced stuff. It is now available for purchase worldwide anywhere you typically buy books, and there is also a direct link in the description. Hello, my name is Masha, and today I'm going to teach you how to make the Bookmark Start, as well as the twisted tie, tassel, and the end. If you're watching this video close to release, then you have a chance of winning this bookmark itself. I am currently running a competition, the advanced tier of which requires you to make a bookmark. There's a few other criteria, so I'll leave the competition announcement video with all of the information of how to submit and what to submit in the description in case you want to participate. This is definitely an advanced technique, so I'm assuming that you know a lot. Most specifically, I assume you know how to make bracelets in general, that you're familiar with the basic knots, and that you're ready for a challenge. Let's get to it. The pattern that I've chosen uses 18 bass strings, so I've cut half of that amount, which is 9, for my bass strings, and I also have another much shorter string of white. I'm going to attach my white string onto my workspace. I use regular painter's tape or masking tape. I don't want to make it too tight, I want to give it a little bit of slack because we're going to be attaching strings to it. And I'm probably going to have to rearrange this a couple more times because as I'm going to pull on it, it's going to come undone. I'm going to start by taking one of the bass strings, folding it in half, and doing a lark's head knot onto this white string. So I'm attaching the bass string to the white string. So we've got this loop, which is due to the string being folded. We're putting it under that white string, like so. Then we're still holding this loop, putting the loop over the white string, then putting my fingers through the loop. I'm gonna grab these two ends and pull them through the loop, like so. And then I tighten it, and my strings are attached. There's one pair. I'm gonna do this again. Grabbing another one of these, and I'm counting them as I go because I always say there's nothing more annoying when making an alpha bracelet than realizing that you miscounted the number of bass strings. So I've already triple counted these, but you know, you can never count too many times. So I fold this, I'm holding the loop, I put the loop under the string, then I pull the loop and put it over the string, put my fingers through it, and pull these two ends through and tighten. Then I'm gonna kind of rearrange them so they sit a little closer together, but I can also do that later once there's more strings on there. And I do this for every single bass string that I have. Now this begs the question of how to do this when you have an uneven number of bass strings, and the answer to that is you round it up to the closest even number. So say you had 17 bass strings, right? I would still put 18 strings on here. I would just eventually hide that one extra string and cut it out from the back. And I'm going to be showing you how to hide the strings anyway, because we need to hide this part, and we're going to need to hide the tail of the white string that I'm going to be using as my leading string eventually. So you're going to hide it the same way, but you can absolutely do this with an uneven amount of strings. Also, if you have an uneven amount of strings and you want your leading string to be the same color as your bass strings, then once you've done all of the attaching, say for example, I want my background string to be green here, and I have an uneven number of strings, I could grab the outermost string here and just use that as a leading string. I've already attached it, that way I don't need to hide the tail of it. I could have just used that as the bass string, and there's no problem. And here is where I'm probably gonna readjust a little bit. There we go. Now I have to just finish attaching all of these strings to that string. All right, my strings are all attached. Time to start making the bracelet. Okay, so this is the part that I'm not very good at, to be honest. I need to spread out the different strings a little bit. I have a tendency to want to bunch them all together, but I have noticed that when I do that, the bracelet starts off fine, but then as soon as I introduce the colors of whatever pattern I'm making, it ends up widening quite a bit. So I'm gonna try to preempt that by spreading out these knots a little bit so that the two pairs of strings are kind of distinctly separate from the pair next to it. I don't know if that makes sense. We'll see how this goes. I'm using a white leading string here, so I'm just gonna cut that, and I'm gonna leave quite a long tail, about this much, because I want to use that tail to kind of tie it into the back of the bracelet so it doesn't stick out eventually. I'm also gonna thread it through behind the bookmark. And I'm also just going to tape it off there, like so. So that's my new leading string. I'm using the straight edge technique, which is basically you make a backward forward knot on the left and a forward backward knot on the right, rather than just a backward or just a forward knot. This keeps the edges a little bit straight rather than slightly bumpy. And I'm just going to make 3 plain rows. I'm going to try to avoid that from happening because see how it just bunched up? I'm going to be very careful making these rows, try to avoid the strings bunching up and also try not to pull on it too hard because this is not very stable. 3 rows. So as I'm approaching the end of the 3rd row, I think this is the perfect opportunity to weave in that string that I was using earlier, the tail of the leading string. I'm going to untape it and I'm going to pull it through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a forward knot onto this next bass string that I need to make a forward knot on with my leading string, but then also onto this string at the same time. So I'm just bundling them together and then I'm going to carefully pull it up because that string is actually all the way on the left side, so it might accidentally pull a bit too tightly. That's 1/2. And then one more time just to secure it in place. So now that tail is in the middle of the bracelet rather than on the edge, making it a lot easier to cut off. So I'm just gonna put it down, through, and off so it's out of the way again. And then I'll cut it off later. This just makes it a little bit easier to do that. All right, so now that that 3rd row is finished, and I chose the number 3 for no reason. You can do however many rows you want. I would recommend at least 2, but you can make however many you want. It'll just kind of lower where that hole is gonna be. And I'm also kind of just using my fingers to make sure that this row is even. I'm going to use a ruler to kind of make sure that it's even this way as well, pulling a little bit on that side. And so I'm going to divide my strings in half. If you have an odd number of strings, then obviously you would have an uneven amount of strings on each side. But I have an even number of strings, so I'm going to have 9 on each side. Both work, you just have to be mindful of the fact that you have an uneven number of strings, if that is the case for you. My leading string is currently on the right side, so I'm going to start by explaining that side. We're going to do a row to the left like normal. And again, because I'm doing the straight edge technique, I start with a forward backward knot here. Now I'm going to go back. But this time we're going to do something akin to what we do when we do a shaped start. So a triangle end. So take the first 2 strings here, and I'm going to do a backward forward knot onto both of them at the same time with my leading string. Do that carefully. And then I'm going to continue the rest of the row as normal. And again, due to the straight edge technique, the last knot that I do is a forward backward knot. And then a forward backward knot again for the first knot of the next row. So I'm going to the left now. If you want more about that technique, you can watch my flat alpha tutorial. I explain it there. Now we're going to go all the way to the left again. Those 2 strings that I did a backward forward knot on are here. I grab another one because we're now going to make a backward forward knot on 3 strings once we get to there. So I'm just making backward knots along each of the other strings, and then once I get to that bundle, I'll make a backward forward knot onto the bundle. So now that I'm here, I've got these 3 strings. I'm going to make a backward forward knot onto them at the same time to widen that gap. Now at this point, I'm not sure if that is enough. There is no hard rule to this. There is no amount of knots that you need to make, or amount of rows rather, that you need to make to create the start. I think this is fine. I'm not sure. So I'm going to switch to the left. I'm going to make the same thing on the left. It's probably going to be about here. And then I'm going to check if I'm satisfied with that gap. So for me, I've got 18 strings. You might have more, you might have less. You might require more or less amount of rows to widen that gap. So just do it until you are satisfied with the gap. Let's do it on the left now. So I need another leading string. So I'm going to cut off another string of white. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to leave quite a long tail here so that I can go back and insert that tail back into the bracelet like we did with this one. I'm going to tape that down and out of the way. And for this one, I am starting on the left. We're doing the exact same thing, just with opposite knots now. So just starting with a regular row first. I'm gonna readjust this because it's being annoying. Just gonna tighten it a little bit. This is my least favorite part about making the bookmark start. It's the tension of the string that I'm making it on. It's annoying to get right. So just a regular row up until here. So these strings are all separate. Okay, now that that regular row is done, I'm grabbing these 2 strings and I'm making a forward backward knot onto both of them at the same time with my leading string. And then I'm going to go all the way to the left in a regular row. Alright, now that my leading string is all the way on the left, I'm going to take those 2 strings I made a forward backward knot onto. I'm going to add 1 more string to them. And then on the remaining strings, I'm just going to make a normal row. So a backward forward knot on the left one and then forward knots along each of the others, just like a regular alpha row. Now that I've encountered these 3 strings, I'm going to make a forward backward knot onto the entire bundle. And as I do that, the 2 sides now match. I think that gap is wide enough. It needs to be just wide enough so that I can insert strings into it to make the tassel. And obviously there's going to be a second half of it as I close it, so it's actually going to be like that big. So I'm deciding now, I'm going to start closing the gap. If you get to this point and your gap isn't wide enough, you can continue adding strings. I've currently got 3 strings in my bundle. If you need to make your gap bigger, then you make your bundle bigger by adding another string to it. Once you decide that your gap is big enough, you can start making it smaller, and you make it smaller by removing strings from the bundle. So since we're on the left side, let's continue with the left side. I currently have 3 strings in the bundle. I've decided that I want to close the gap. So I'm going to remove 1 of the strings from the bundle, and I'm going to make a forward backward knot onto the 2 strings that are in the bundle. And then I'm going to make the rest of the row as normal. Now I've got 2 strings in that bundle. In order to widen it, I just separate them and I treat them as individual strings. There is no bundle anymore. So I'm just going to be making a normal row here. Let's focus on the right side for now. Again, I have 3 strings in that bundle at the moment. So I'm going to take 1 of those strings out because I want to close that gap. And I'm going to be making a backward forward knot onto 2 strings rather than 3. And I'm going to continue that row as normal. Now you might notice that there is a row completed on the left side that I didn't explain. It's because I started explaining it and then I realized that I actually don't like that way. Initially, I was saying that you can just make a row and connect the 2 halves there. But as I was trying to do it, I realized that that happens and that it might be a bit too early to connect them. So despite the fact that all of these strings can be treated as individual strings now, because there are 2 strings in the bundle here, you separate them, they become individual strings, I think it's too early to connect the 2. So I'm actually going to untie half of this knot as well, because currently this is just a forward knot. And I'm going to turn it into a forward backward knot. So I untied half of that knot, it was a forward knot, now it is a forward backward knot. So I'm actually going to bring this row back 1 more time. So again, 1 more forward backward knot. That first forward backward knot was for the previous row, this is for the new row. And I'm going to bring it back 1 more time and then I'm going to connect the 2. I also think that this actually mirrors the way that we started. We originally did the same thing here. Okay, I feel like that might have been a little bit confusing, so let me show you again on this side. We have 2 strings here in the bundle. When we separate them, when we bring 1 string out in order to close that gap, they become individual strings. So we're essentially just making a regular row here. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with a forward backward knot here, and I'm going to go all the way to the left in backward knots, except on that last string, the one that's in the very middle. I'm going to make a backward forward knot onto that one instead. Alright, so here I'm making a backward forward knot onto the last string, and that completes this row. And then I'm going to make another backward forward knot onto it to start the next row. And I'm going to do a row of forward knots until I reach the edge, and I'm going to make a forward backward knot onto the last string as per the straight edge technique. Alright, now this is where I think that I've finally closed the gap enough and also made the gap long enough to connect the two halves. I only need one leading string for this. It can be either one. I'm going to choose the one on the left. So I'm going to put the one on the right away. And by that I mean I'm just going to put it under here and I'm going to deal with it later. And so with this leading string on the left, I'm just going to make a row like normal and connect the two halves. Starting with a backward forward knot as per the straight edge technique, and then a row of forward knots until I reach the edge onto which I'm going to make a forward backward knot as per the straight edge technique. Alright, here I am. This next knot is going to connect the two halves, and I'm going to do it carefully and gently. There we go. I don't want to pull on it too much. I want to make sure that this stays even. I might use my finger to kind of make sure everything is in place. This is very fiddly. This is probably my least favorite part to do. Like maybe I started a bit too wide. I can't really tell. So I might try to like push it in a bit. If you make your knots a little bit on the looser side, you can manipulate them like this with your fingers to kind of push them in a little bit, spread them out a little bit. So don't make your knots too tight when you can avoid it. I think that's good. I'm going to continue with this row. And then just to secure that connection, because at the moment it is a little bit loose, so I'm not liking this part. I'm really gonna have to fiddle with that to make sure that it's straight. But just to secure that connection, I'm gonna make another row of just pure white. I'm not starting my pattern yet. I'm just gonna go with a row of pure white to the left this time. And I'm going to use it as an opportunity to finally weave in all of these loose ends. So I have 4 strings to weave in. I've got these 2 on the edges, and then I've got this one, which was the leading string on the right, and I also have one of these. Figure out which one. This one has already been done, so this one is that loose end from when we weaved in another leading string at the beginning. So 4 strings I need to weave in. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. We kind of merge them with one of the bass strings. I definitely don't want to do it on the first like 3 because I feel like that's too close to the edge. So I'm just going to make the first 3 knots. Disclaimer, you don't have to do this every single time you weave in strings. The reason I'm weaving in the tails of this one is because I introduced this string on the edge. Realistically speaking, I can probably just cut it off and it'll be fine. But I don't want to risk a little tail still peeking out from the edge. This is the only situation in which I would do this, if it's on the edge. If it's somewhere in the middle where you introduce a new string, you really don't have to bother with this. But I introduced this one on the edge. This one I had to take out on the edge. So that's why I'm doing it with these. And then obviously these just stick out from the sides. So that's why I'm doing it with those as well. So I've done 3 knots. I'm no longer close to the edge. On this 4th bass string, we are going to weave in this one, which used to be the leading string on the right. I'm just gonna use it here. And as we did last time, I'm just making a backward knot onto the 2 of them at the same time. Go. That essentially moves this string from all the way at the edge where it was to somewhere closer to the middle. Now I can put it out to the side, and when I cut it off, it won't be so close to the edge, and that way it won't be risky for it to kind of peek out. Make another regular knot just to make a regular knot. And then kind of the annoying part, because now I need to weave in this. It's annoying because I'm gonna have to re-secure my bracelet, or I guess my bookmark, in my desk, but let's do it. I'm just gonna need a bit more tape. This edge piece, you can also just cut it off. If you would like to do that, you can. Actually, do you know what? I want it to be closer to the middle. I don't want it right here. I want it a lot closer to the middle. I can manage that. I'm gonna wait. Still gonna tape it down here, but I'm gonna wait to do that. Make like 3 more regular knots. This is where I'm going to do it. So this tiny white string is coming all the way from that edge here. I'm just going to make a backward knot onto it and the bass string at the same time. That way I can cut it off in the middle and it'll be all right. It's not right at that edge there. I'm gonna make like 2 more regular knots and then I'm gonna focus on the strings on the left. All right, now for the strings on the left. I have 2 of them. This is a tail from when I introduced another leading string. It's right on the edge. And then this one obviously is sticking out from the side. That's the string that we were making the knots onto originally. So I'm going to start with this one because I want this one to be closer to the middle. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure that it's behind the bracelet, behind the bookmark here. Secure it back to the desk. And I'm going to make a backward knot onto this string and the bass string at the same time. Again, I've just weaved it in. So now I can put it behind and then cut it off later. And I make one more regular knot, and I'm making regular knots in between just because I want to, I don't know, spread them out. And then that tail that I had remaining is the only one left for me to weave in. So I'm gonna do it with the next string that I have. I'm gonna make a backward knot onto the green string and the white string at the same time. Cool. Now the white string can go off to the side. And I can finish my row. And this is what it looks like. It's a bit wonky. So I'm gonna try to use my fingers to get it in shape. I think I overcorrected. Last time I did it, I made the top too narrow. This time I tried to make it a little bit wider. I think I overcorrected and made it a bit too wide. So looking at the back, this is that original string that we weaved in at the very beginning. I'm gonna cut that off right as close as I can get. These, I'm not gonna cut off, but just showing you, this is that string that's coming from the edge, the one that we originally made all of these locks had knots onto. Then there's another one coming here on that side. There's one here that we weaved in and one here that we weaved in. I'm going to wait to cut off all of these strings. I want to make a few more rows just so that their tails don't get in the way. But eventually I am going to be also cutting these strings. For the time being, I'm just going to pull them up so they're out the way. And I'm going to secure this to my workspace and start making my pattern. I just made 2 rows of my pattern and I'm ready to cut the strings off. It's quite a lot of strings to cut off here. Got these ones that we weaved in, just cutting them quite close. These, don't be afraid to cut it quite close. It will be fine, I promise. I also have a yellow string that I weaved in, and I also weaved in a new leading string because I started running out of that. And there we go. Now I just have my 1 leading string and my 1 yellow string, and I'm ready to continue making this bracelet. I have now finished my design, but I want to hide this white leading string. I want the end of my bracelet to only consist of this color. I'm going to hide it in a similar way to how I hid these strings at the top. But rather than weaving them into the bracelet, I'm just going to kind of pull it through some of these strings that I have at the back. And I think I'm going to pull it through maybe some of these white strings. I'm going to use a safety pin and get it underneath this white string carefully, and then just as carefully, because I don't want to hurt myself, I'm going to try to hook that white string under like so, and then gently pull it through. There we go. Now it's underneath that white string, but that's not enough probably. I want to get it underneath some more strings. I think this one might be good, this orange one. It's quite a lot trickier than it looks, to be honest. It's a very delicate process. But there we go. And then maybe one more, maybe I flip it and it goes down now. Maybe I go underneath this one. I think this might be overkill, to be honest. I probably could have just stopped here, but I'd rather be safe. There we go. There we go. I feel comfortable in cutting this off now. Cut it. And now for the ending, I'm going to do something similar to the triangle end. I've separated my strings in half, and on the left side, starting with the 2 outermost strings, I make a backward knot. I then grab the next string and I make a backward knot onto both of the strings at the same time. I then grab the next string and again I make a backward knot onto the entire bundle at the same time. I continue doing this for the remaining strings. On the right side, I do the same thing except with forward knots. Starting with the 2 strings on the outer edge, I'm going to make a forward knot. I then grab the next string and I make a forward knot onto both of the strings at the same time. Then the next string makes a forward knot on the entire bundle, and so on until I run out of strings. I now need to connect the 2 halves by doing a square knot. I'm going to do that with a white piece of string, because that's also how I plan to do the tassel, so it should match. Put your string underneath the bracelet, or the bookmark in this case. Grab the left piece of string, put it over the middle. Grab the right piece of string, put it over the left piece of string, under the middle, and then through this loop here, like so. And then tighten like so. And try to get it as close to that connection as you can. And then the same thing, but on the other side. The right side goes over the middle, the left goes over the right, under the middle, and then through this loop underneath it. And then tighten it. And I'm going to do that twice more. one on each side. Over the middle, over the left, under the middle, through that loop. And now the right goes over the middle. This goes over the right, under the middle, and through that loop. And so I'm going to cut it about here. Nice. I want to finish my bookmark with a tassel coming off from a twisted tie. I've got 2 white strings that are about 60 centimeters long, folded in half, because I don't want my twisted tie to be too thick. And now I'm going to try to fit these strings through the loop, like so. If you found this part a little trickier to do, you can use a safety pin like we did previously at the back to kind of fish those strings out and pull them through. I didn't have to do that this time. But what we are going to do is, now that that loop of strings is pulled through here, we're going to put our fingers in it and we're going to do a lark's head knot. So we're going to grab those white strings sticking out from the loop on the other side, pull them through this loop and tighten it like so. Now our strings are attached. If you want a full tutorial on twisted ties, I have that available. But really, you just separate your strings in half. So I've got 2 in one side, 2 on the other. You twist them both in the same direction for as long as you feel you need to. I like to get mine quite tight. The second one is always harder to twist because you only have one hand to do it with. And then you twist them both together in the other direction. And you do this until your tie reaches the length that you want it to be. As you go along, you might have to retwist it occasionally, as it does like to be a bit annoying. And then once your tie has reached the length that you want it to be, you just make an overhand knot to secure it in place, like so. I have a more detailed tutorial on overhand knots if that was a bit too fast. It's in my basic knots video. I also like to go back, untwist these ends, and pull on each one individually just to make sure I really tighten that overhand knot. It's not so much about making the knot more secure as it is making it a little bit more compact so it doesn't stick out as much. I'm then going to cut off the excess string. Next, you need to cut the strings you want to use for the tassel. Mine are about 15 centimeters in length. You can make them a little bit longer. You want to kind of evenly spread them out and also prepare some string to make square knots with later on. You want to lay the twisted tie over these strings and you want its knot to be roughly in the center of them. Then use these strings to bunch over the knot and kind of cover it. I then place a string underneath all of this and I make a simple knot, just as if I'm tying my shoelaces essentially, over where this knot is. There we go. I can then cut these strings a little shorter and flip over the top and kind of even it out across everything. The more strings you have here, the easier this part will be to do. And now the final step is to make some square knots. I'm going to place my string underneath the bundle. I'm going to tape this down to make it a bit easier to film so it doesn't move. And again, I'm just doing square knots. Starting with the left side, it goes over the middle. The right piece goes over the left, under the middle, through this loop, and then I'm going to tighten it carefully. And then the right piece goes over. The left goes over the right, under the middle, and through this loop. And then I tighten it. And that's it. My tassel is done. Now I just need to cut it, but I'm going to do that off camera because it's a bit easier. And there we have it. My bookmark is now complete. It has a tassel and a nice end to it, as well as a twisted tie holding it all together. Another finishing touch you could do, but I'm not going to do today, is attaching a backing. That's something that you can do with alpha bracelets as well. You can sew something onto the back of it. I've seen people use felt, pieces of cloth. I've even seen some people use leather. But this is not a skill that I personally have, so so you'll have to find a tutorial elsewhere. Another thing as well, if this happens to you, which is annoying, you can take a little bit of water, wet your hands, and wet the strings. And then, once they dry, they should be straight, and so those ends don't stick out as much. But there you go, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you're watching this close to when the video is released, then I'm currently running a bracelet competition, the advanced tier of which requires you to make a bookmark. So if you'd like to participate in the competition, and potentially win this bookmark itself, I'll leave the competition announcement video with all of the rules and the details of how to submit in the video description. My book, The Beginner's Guide to Friendship Bracelets, is now out worldwide. You can buy it anywhere you typically buy books, and there is also a direct link in the description. And I also want to give a special shout out to my YouTube members. It is with their support that I'm able to continue creating videos on this channel. If you want to become a member, support the work that I do here, and get exclusive perks, like early access to videos, priority in competitions, a private Discord server, and extra bonus content, then join the channel. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!